Good afternoon. Welcome to another TeleDynes live stream. Yeah, so we're back again. Try to figure out what to do today. I've got, I had some things planned, but I changed it up a little bit at the last minute because one of the song breakdowns. But we're going to start with the guitar technique like we've normally been doing, and then I'm going to reverse it a little bit. We're going to do just a little bit of music theory, and then over to the song that I've chosen for today because the concepts relate to each other, and if I explain the theory part, it'll make more sense, I think, when we're talking about the song. So let's get started. Double stops. Okay. So that means playing two notes at once, two strings at once. And there are many, many different types you can play. So that little riff right in the beginning there, a fairly common one. And it's kind of a reminiscent of Chuck Berry and early rock and roll stuff. I don't know if Chuck Berry invented that or if it's more, or, probably before with the blues like T-Bone Walker and so on. But you basically just take the pad of your ring finger and you play the G string and the B string and you bend up as much as you can. And then hit the top two strings, the E and the B. And it's just the pentatonic. You're just playing off of that. And then you can, another one is, of course, the rock and roll tritone. And reversed. But you play the 7th fret. In this case, if we're in A, we're playing the 7th fret on the B string and the 8th fret on the E string. Right? So it's you're playing a minor third back to a root, or a minor third, and then here you're playing the 6th of the scale back to the root and 5th. You bounce back and forth, or whatever rhythm you want to play is up to you. And you can also play here. Again, you can kind of pick off of all of this on the pentatonic scale, and you're just playing double strings as opposed to just playing one. And when you're playing 1, 4, 5, right, you can play over you could do a whole solo over that, right? And then when you go to the 4, because the 4 is right here, it's a D9, and you can bounce back and forth here. Back to the 1, and then the 5 is here. And so those are the basic, that's the kind of the introductory level to double stops. And then you get into triplets, and you're playing the same thing, but you're pulling off, instead of just one string, you pull off 2. You go little finger, pull off. When you're pulling off, you're not just lifting your finger, you're kind of dragging it down, So because if you just go, it's not not going to get the same effect. You're kind of dragging it down just a little bit. You can go down a string. And you can do that same thing here, right? There's the A. And you're just playing in fifths. You can go down here to this A, play like this. It's a different harmony, right? So you still have the root here, but then you have the third on the top. And over here you got the root on the top and the fifth on the bottom. So they're different, but jump back and forth, whatever you want to do. And then I said so that's part of the triplet pull-offs. And then I'll show you a couple other little tricks that you can do. This works in certain keys, specifically like A and E and, the Rockabilly keys, where you can utilize open strings. So you just have to be somewhat careful with what you're doing. But if you're in E, for example, you can play that. There's your tritone, right? And then you go up here. That's like a third and a root. And here, there's your fifth, minor third, and back to here, back to the octave. And you can play off of that, and you play open strings, and you kind of bounce it. You can do this too. Just the, whole fret up, just a whole tone up, F sharp and C, and open. Right? And you build that up to speed, it can, it sounds pretty cool. And you can throw that in over a 1, and it, fills in some space, and it sounds cool, and you get the delay going and everything else live. Another thing you can do is, I'm just playing the scale up in fifths, and you can play this. It sounds cool like this. If you go open, 4th fret, triplet, open again. Actually, 16th notes. The Danny Gatton thing, right? So those are your, I always try to add double stops. And again, it comes back to being the only guitar player in the band. When you have other players with you and you have other guitar players especially, sometimes throwing in all of these extra chords and all of these extra double stops and things can get a little messy. And but if you're the only one, and typically I've usually always been the only guitar player in the band, and so it's easy to fill in space if you think about things in terms of double stops. So if you have a lead line that you're playing, I always try to figure out, especially riffs like in between the vocals and stuff, when you're kind of sort of going back and forth between rhythm and lead and that sort of thing, and you're trying to keep the space filled up. Then you want to play a little riff that's got those double stops in there, and maybe even into a full chord or whatever. And part of the trick of having with a 3-piece and filling in that space is one of the first things that I noticed when I first started out playing in bands and trying to do a 3-piece is that you'd go to a solo and the bottom end would just drop out. It was a big, what would happen, right? And part of keeping it filled is a combination of the players that are playing with you, the drummers specifically, um, playing something that's going to fill in a lot of space. So the typical thing that a drummer should do is when you go to a solo, go to the ride, right? Or an open hi-hat, or play a swinging train on the snare, so it fills in a lot of space because there's no rhythm guitar player or piano or whatever. Um, the other thing is, of course, having the all of the rockabilly stuff kind of works because of all of the elements that are going on. You've got that going on, and then you've also got the upright clicking, and that fills in a lot of space. That's another percussive sound that's going on. And then you have the delay on the guitar, which is fairly crucial, I would say, to playing rockabilly. And that all of that together creates a nice rounded out sound. And even every once in a while, you'll still come up with songs that just you lose the bottom end. And so getting used to trying to do like finger picking stuff, keeping that bottom end going, having a good bass player too, and that's really going to fill in that bottom end is super important as well. Um, and then you're less likely to for it to feel like the bottom's dropped out. So let's see if there's any other double stops. I think that's really it for the double stops that I can think of that I usually end up going to. Other than right, you can do stuff like that, or right. That's all. That's power chords, but you're still hitting multiple notes at the same time, and it's filling in a lot of space when the delay's going. Like I said, that's really kind of the point, I guess. And the fifths is what creates that rock and roll sound, that piano sound on guitar. From what I understand, that's where like Chuck Berry kind of got the idea from. Is what I've been told. Trying to make, so you're picking these notes almost percussively more than gliding from one to the other. It's very staccato, right? Um, so then you can pick this stuff with your fingers too. So some of you probably know that already, and you just, instead of just playing with a pick, use your middle and ring finger and pick it. Especially on the bridge pickup. Sounds cool, right? All right. So on to the next thing. So we're going to go into the music theory a little bit, and that pretty much rounds out the double stops that I can think of. If I come up with more next time, I will address it. Or if somebody has anything else, let me know in the comments, and we can talk about it next week, or now. Okay, so I'll go over this as quick as I can. So we went over this a little bit last week, but we're going over just chord extensions. So when you keep adding chords beyond a triad, you get an extension, right? And when we add notes in the scale, you just go up the next line here, right? So this would be a C up to the G. If you add one more to the B, you get a C major seventh. So you keep adding, and you go to the line, and you don't go to the space, you go to the line, because if we go to the space here, right, then you're just adding another E. It's just repeating notes. So if you added a D, that would be a 9 or a second, but it's a 9 because it's an octave above. So you keep counting up. So like a fourth is an 11th, and a 6 is a 13th, and so on and so forth. So when you add that, you would get a C major 7 add 9. And then you could get a C major, if you added an F natural, you get a C major 7 add 9 add 11. So you just keep going, and that, but that's all diatonic. It's all within the scale. So when we're adding chord extensions, and what we really are talking about is also dominant chords. Dominant chords, minor chords basically function the same way. You can keep adding notes on top of it, whether it's a dominant minor or a dominant major. For now, we'll just talk about dominant major, but the difference is that if you can just take the same major chord and drop the third by a half step, and you get your minor. That's pretty much it. So when you go to a seventh, for example, like let's go down to D, the fifth is the natural dominant chord in the key of D. So you would go A, whoops, and it would be C sharp, because I don't have this in a key. E, G natural. And it's a G natural because we're in the key of D, and G is natural in the key of D. So then you get an A7 naturally, diatonically, within the key of D. But if we wanted to play a D7 in the key of D, well, now we go down here, we play a D, the third is an F sharp, an A is the fifth, and when we add another note on top, the C, natural, now you get a D7. But C is not natural in the key of D. I don't know if it'll allow me to do that. No, it won't. So if I were in the key of D, that would come up. You would have a natural sign next to it, because in the key of D, it's automatically you would read that as a C sharp, even though there would be no accidental next to it, right? So you would have to qualify that as a natural. But then you get a D7. Now, this is where all the chord extensions can come from. 9s, 13s, I guess 11s really, but usually 11s are added like a 4, like a sus4. But anyway, we'll talk, the main dominant chords would be like 7s, 9s, 13s. All of those chords have to be supported by, or flat 9s, flat 13s, all that stuff too. Sharp 5s. All of that stuff have to be supported by the flat 7. So that's what qualifies it as the difference between an add 9 versus a 9 chord. So if you see something that says D9, that's not just D major add a ninth to it. You have to make sure that that flat 7 is in the chord, right? So there's your D9, because we got the C natural there. But if it were a C major, if it were a C sharp, it would be a D major 7th add 9. So the same thing goes for adding the 13th, right? So when you add the 13th, you're adding a B. Let me get that chord out of the way. Get that chord out of the way there. So that's a D9 13. And if you didn't want the 9, you would just get rid of the 9, right? And you have a 13. So when you see that in music, it's gonna it would say something like D9. But really it should be D7 9. That would be more clear, but for shorthand, a lot of sheet music and a lot of stuff you'll you'll read is not going to have that. You're just going to see D9 or you're going to see D13. And the qualifier that music will usually put in there is add 9 or add 13. That would mean that it's not a dominant chord. You don't put the flat 7 in that. So if you see that and you wouldn't play, whoops, you wouldn't play that if you were to do that. You would just add in the 9, right? You probably heard that chord before, but people play that all the time. And that can be called a sus2 is another name for an add 9. The difference between like sus2 and an add 9 would be where it is in the chord technically. So the higher the register, if you have the difference between the note is right next to each other, D to E, that would be a 2, right? But if it's way up here and the intervals are more than an octave apart, that's a 9. Technically. But that's where you can inverse these notes, change the inversions of them, and that's where you can have a lot of fun. And that's where I want to get into the song next, because we can talk about that, how different chords relate to each other. And even though they're the same, they are spelled differently, and how they're used within a song can change the whole feel, or at least add another form of motion to the song. So I hope that makes sense. That's that's pretty much it when you're trying to figure out these chords. So if you see a chord that says, okay, I was reading a piece of music the other day that said, what was it? G, A minor 7, add 4. So you would play an A minor 7, but you would add the 4th. You could also call that an 11. It's just a choice by the composer, right? So you would put that sound, right? And now I don't have the C anymore, so I can put it up here. Or keep the 4 down here, right? Just play it like that. You could almost play the whole neck like that. That sounds more like the chord, right? And again, it's because 1, 2, 3, 4. The note that you're playing, it's all about the intervals too. You want to make sure that 4 note is a fourth above the root, because everything is related to the root. So if something says add 4, it's because you're adding it to the root. So if you add a D up here, but your A is way down here, well, then that's an 11, right? So it's all about the distance between the root note to what the extension is related to what you call it, basically, and the sound to a certain degree, right? But again, one of the things you can do is reverse these notes and create different inversions based on either melody, voice leading, motion, all of that stuff, and make something a little bit more interesting and play it different ways, different times when you go around the song, so you're not just playing the same exact thing over and over and over again. All right. Okay. So, yeah, I think that'll do it for the music theory part. Let's go on to the song. The song breakdown for the week. Here we go. All right. Bring the song up here. Okay, so I was going to go over Blue Moon of Kentucky today, but I realized that it's kind of the same thing as Blue Days, Black Nights, just a slightly different arrangement. Um, if you want to know Blue Moon of Kentucky, it's just A, D, E. That's, we're done. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but if you want me to go over that, we can. But that one's fairly straight ahead. One of the good things one of the things I recommend people getting used to is playing by ear in the sense of following the chord patterns. If you're trying to figure out songs by ear, the best thing to do is listen to the bass. Listen to the bass first. See where it's going. Hear the chord changes. Get used to hearing that's a 1, that's a 4, that's a 6, that's a 2, that's a 1. And then you know where the bass is going. And once you know where that is, then you can extrapolate from there what the chord more than likely is. And then at that point, using the chord extension methods, techniques, and everything we've gone over for the last few weeks, you can make the chords either more complicated, less complicated, whatever suits your ear best. Because at the end of the day, it does come down to your ear. I'll always keep reiterating it. Music is for the ears, not for the eyes. Okay? So this song has that same sort of thing as Stray Cat Strut. Hit the road, Jack. Summertime. That minor descending line to the 5th. The difference here is that in this one, instead of going F, E flat, major, or 7 all the way down, it stays on the F minor. But we get an E flat in the bass. So really what that is, to put the E flat in the bass, you can go. And what that ends up being is, when you put an E flat in the bass of an F minor, what do you get? An F minor 7. And you keep going. And this is the intro. This is the intro part right here, so it just keeps repeating. And it's kind of sort of based on what I was doing, the video I did of this, when I just have a little instrumental version of it. But I wanted to talk about it because of the turnaround, specifically when we get to the C7 to the C flat 9, before we go back to the descending line again. When you go C7, you go here, right? Right? That's the turnaround. So it just stays on F. That's the verse. Then we go to the bridge. 4. B flat 9 to F 9. B flat minor 6, slight alteration. To the E7, the 5 of B flat, right? And then we do this little A flat, F minor 7. Back to the A flat 6. Back to that same D flat to C9. So we've got, I guess you could call it the third, minor third, because really we're in F, but we're really in A flat, right? We're in A flat relative major. So call it the minor third. if we're in minor. And I think that it can get a little confusing when you start thinking about things in terms of minor versus major, and you start changing the scale degrees. So I always like this. I like to think of it in the same key, the same major key, as opposed to making it more complicated for no reason. So you're going to the 4, or in this case, it's the 4 of F, but in E flat it's a 2. So you go to a 2, but because we're in minor, you go to you go to a B flat. It functions as a 4. The minor keys are cool that way because you can utilize the same motions as you were. You would think of it as a 4, but it's really a 2. E flat, which is really a 5th, and then you go 1, do this little thing. Suddenly we're actually moving into a major key for a second, really, because you go 1, 6, 2, 5 in E flat. Wouldn't be that in F minor. So what the bridge kind of goes out of the minor key and goes into a major key for a minute. And then back to that turnaround. Now here, when we go to the turnaround, it's reestablishing the fact that the 5, we're back to the 5 of F. We're back to, and it's a dominant. It's not a C minor, right? So it's, and that's why I like to consider it still a major key and think of it in A flat, because typically, usually, even when you play, you hear songs in E minor, right? When they go to the 5, it's a 7, or it's a dominant chord. It's a major chord, right? Because we're in G. And so it's pulling, what it's doing is it's pulling from the major of the E. It's pulling from a major, right? So technically in the major key, it should be a minor. It should be like this is a 3rd. It should be a minor key, but it's a dominant key. And this is a standard substitution trick. If you have a 3, if you have a 2, 5, 2, 6, 5, 1, you can make them majors, you can make them minors, you can do all sorts of things. And you can, and a lot of this depends on the melody, right? And how you want to establish what key that you're in. If you played this as a minor chord if you played this as a minor chord, it wouldn't establish that we're back in F again. It would sound like we're somewhere else. And so that's why it creates tension. And that's what the 5 chord does, is it creates that sense of, okay, now what? And then you go back to resolving it. So yeah, when you play, so that's the bridge. But the interesting part to me was, I wrote this out here. When you have the C7, you can do something like this. Here's a substitution. You can do this. And this, all of this right here is the same chord, just a descending version of it. So you go C7, E, D flat. So instead of playing it down here, I just play it up here so I can. And then when we want to go to a C flat 9, if we go to a C9, this form of it, and we just add the 9 in, we take the 9 and we lower it by a half step, so it's a flat 9. You get an E diminished 7. Same chord. The only difference is we don't have the root of the C note. The bass is playing it, so it doesn't matter here. So you can play, instead of just going, you can go. And it creates a little bit more interesting movement, I think. Or in the bottom one here, we're going up. Right? All the same chord. They just that you got to call it something when it's spelled like this. So this is technically what it would be. But really it's just the it's just a C flat 9. It's just a C flat 9 played differently, inverted differently. So one thing I was talking about, I wanted to be clear about that minor dominant thing. When you're playing a dominant chord, you are pulling from the major dominant chord of the relative of the minor, like the major version of the minor. So if you're in E minor, the fifth of E major is B flat, and you're pulling from that chord. Because if you were in G and you played a B, naturally it would be minor. But you could make it a dominant chord depending on the song, whatever. But naturally, diatonically in G, it's going to be a B minor. And in E minor, it should be a fifth. It still should be a minor chord. If you were to, again, go back to the theory thing and do the chord extensions all the way up in E minor, the only sharp is an F in E minor. And if you were to build that that chord up in the same way, you would get a B minor, not a B7. So you have to pull from the fifth of the major version of that scale in order to establish that it's a dominant chord. I don't know if I've ever heard any song. There probably are songs that go. That would technically be a full, everything's minor, right? But a lot of the times you just hear the major dominant. So that started getting into substitutions a little bit. So we're gonna we'll talk about that next week. We're talking about chord progressions. Yeah, substitutions, chord progressions next week. And I wanted to address one other thing too. Last week I released like a couple of videos on the channel about rock and roll rhythm and stuff like that. And I've been trying to take some of these segments and go through them and edit them, and that way people can watch them in separate from having to go through this live stream or whatever. And we're talking about Stray Cat Strut going, where was it, on the bridge part? Yeah, the bridge, where I would go E or C, F minor first, and then back to C, and then you go back to that, and then a D. And I was talking about this chord, A minor, A flat minor 6, technically without the root. And somebody had pointed it out. Somebody had left a comment on the video pointing it out that it technically is a G7 sharp 5, and that is correct. Technically, that would be a G7. So I apologize for oversight there. That should be a G7, a G7 sharp 5, or a G7 sharp 5 flat 9. You could also call it a G7 or a G flat 9. I'm sorry, a G flat 9 flat 13. That's the way I saw it spelled in a book once. But in the original recording, this he doesn't play this. It's just up here. But within the context of the song, that would be, again, the fifth that you're pulling from the major version of C. Or in C minor, E flat. So you always pull the dominant fifth of the the major version of that scale, I guess. It's not the relative major. It's not the relative major. It's the I forget what it's called. I have a my mind's blank on that for a moment. But I always get relative minor would be E flat, relative major would be E flat, relative minor of E flat is C minor, and then the when you pull that seventh, it could be just a seventh or a sharp five, or you add the flat nine, but that's what it should be within the context of the song. But also the spelling of it, if you omit the root, you end up with an A minor 6, or A flat minor 6. Now, if I add the root here to this chord, it kind of sounds, that sounds weird, right? A little funky. But it works down here. All right, I just wanted to address that, and also, let's see, talk about next week. We're, hey, Stevie. Oh, wow. Well, yep, take care, man. Stay warm. I know there's a potential snowstorm this weekend, so we'll see how that happens. We'll see what happens with that, rather. All right, so yeah, I got a gig tonight. It's like a Christmas party gig, sort of, I guess. Um, it sounds pretty cool. I'm kind of looking forward to it. So it's called Krampus Christmas or Black. Yeah, that's what it. And it's at a place called the Met in Pawtucket, and we're just playing an hour, but um, it should be fun. It's always fun to play there because they have a huge, massive PA system, and we get to mic everything up and play super loud. So that's always fun. And got to figure out a couple of Christmas songs, I guess, in a few hours to play for the crowd. All right, well, that's pretty much it for today. I hope that was helpful, informative. I just found that really cool. I wanted to go over that. Or whatever. You can use that as it's voice leading, right? Or just moving one chord to another form of the other chord, and then you could, if you imagined, a string section or a horn section or something, you could write that for them, and that would be moving. You could write one section going down and the other section going up, and have parallel motion and create, um, a whole lot of sound, right? Cool. All right then. I'm gonna get ready. A little shorter live stream today, but hopefully have some more videos up here soon. I've got the guitar lesson. The first one, the very first one, is done. I'm editing the second one, and I hopefully will have that up by the end of next week. And then I've got a couple of other songs. Still working on Double Talkin' Baby. I haven't really had much time to sit down and really hash out the solos and everything, but hopefully very soon. And then we'll also have another podcast up shortly. And yeah, we'll just keep it going until people either the channel either grows or people get sick of it. We'll see what happens. All right, I will see you guys later, and have a good evening, have a safe weekend, and we'll see you guys next week. Next week will be on Sunday. Hey, Richard. Oh, thank you very much for joining in. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. if I got anything wrong, I do want to create. I do want to say this. Um, I want to create a sense of community that everybody feel that can be involved. So if you feel if I get something wrong or I miss something, omit something or whatever, feel free to comment, leave a comment, reach out, and we can talk about it on the live stream, address it, make a video of it. Of course, I'll give you credit for it, whatever. But it I want to get a sense that I want everybody to have a sense that they can interact with this instead of that and that we can all have fun because it's all about having fun and enjoying the music and keeping live music alive. Real musicians playing real stuff and not robots. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And yeah, feel free to reach out via email or leave a comment. I more than likely will see it. If you really want to get in touch with me directly, email's the best route. Because sometimes the comments will go by and I don't see it, and I try to, and I don't know. And I've responded to people's questions sometimes, and I have no idea if if you respond back to that response. I don't know if people are, because I have no idea whether it's because I've never seen a response from my response, so I don't know whether people have, and I've just missed it. Maybe the program, the YouTube studio thing doesn't show me your response. Um, so if I don't respond, I apologize. It's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just because I don't see it. So until next time, have a good evening, and however for me, wherever you are, and I will see you next week.